Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be continuing my series looking at people who were jailed for the offence of murder. But I'm switching countries from England, where I've done the majority of my videos, and now I'm going to be looking at Wales. And I'm going to be looking specifically at every murderer who was jailed in 2024 in Wales, including one person who was given a whole life order. Now, I've trawled through a variety of sources to put this video together, including local newspapers, various police websites, and other sources. And I found 7 cases involving 8 individuals who were jailed for the offence of murder in Wales in 2024. Now, I'm fairly confident that I've captured everyone, but if there is someone in this list that I have missed, please do let me know, and please also let me know the source, because I might need it for future reference for other videos. Welcome to my channel, Andy on Crime, where I look at high-profile criminal cases and other aspects of criminal law in England and Wales. And if you do want to follow me on other social media channels, you can find me on TikTok, and my handle is AndyOnCrime1. And you can also find me on Twitter or X, and my handle is AndyOnCrime. If you would like to support my channel, then you can do so in a number of ways. You can become a member of this channel and get exclusive perks, and you can do so by clicking the join button just below this video. You can click the link in the description down below and sign up with NordVPN, where you can get a huge discount on a variety of their plans, or you can click my Amazon affiliate logo as well, and that will help to support my channel. And finally, you can buy some Andy on Crime merchandise, such as the t-shirt that I'm wearing. I've recently updated my logo, and hopefully you'll agree that it looks really, really good. And I'm sure by buying a t-shirt, you will wear it much better than I am right now. Now, before we get into this video, I just want to remind people, and I say this in all of these videos that I do, that anyone convicted of the offence of murder in England and Wales will be given a mandatory life sentence. The only question is how long the minimum term or tariff will be, and that's the period that an individual will spend in prison in full before they are eligible to apply to the parole board for release. That doesn't mean that they will be released, it's just the earliest point in which they can apply. It's up to the parole board, and a person will only be released if it's deemed that they are no longer a danger to the public. If they are released, then they will be subject to a number of conditions for the rest of their life. Now, in rare cases, and there's one example in this video, someone can be given what's called a whole life order. What that means is that there is no minimum term. That person will never be released from prison unless they successfully appeal their conviction or their sentence. With all that being said, let's get into the video. At number 1 is Mathew Pickering, who was sentenced on the 5th of February. In May 2023, 49-year-old Pickering murdered his partner, 46-year-old Georgina Davies, at her home in Cadoxton, Neath in South Wales. Georgina, who was a vulnerable individual with a history of alcohol abuse, had moved into Pickering's residence in March, after previously living in a woman's refuge in Barry. The couple had known each other since school, and Georgina was reportedly besotted with Pickering, whom she had described as the love of her life. On the evening of the 5th of May, going into the early hours of the 6th of May, Pickering assaulted Georgina, inflicting injuries including a broken nose, before strangling her to death. He then left her body on the floor of their downstairs bathroom, covering her head with a black bin bag. The judge later described this as a terrifying way to die. In the aftermath, Pickering attempted to conceal his crime. He spent approximately 40 hours covering his tracks, during which he sent a text message to Georgina's phone, pretending she had travelled to Merthyr. He purchased bleach to clean the scene and disposed of potential evidence, including her 2 mobile phones, which were never recovered. Some items were found in local bins, including a dog waste bin. Pickering's actions were partially captured on CCTV, showing him buying the cleaning supplies and disposing of the items in the local area. He also made disclosures to family members about what he had done the following day. Initially, Pickering pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but denied the murder of Georgina. However, following an 11-day trial at Swansea Crown Court, he was found guilty of the murder of Georgina. and on the 5th of February 2024, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 17.5 years. At number 2 is James Smith. In September 2023, 36-year-old Smith from Llanelli murdered 26-year-old Ashley Saracero by stabbing him in the neck with a fishing knife. The incident occurred outside of Ashley's home. Smith had met Ashley's mother, Claire Richards, earlier that evening and accompanied her back to her residence. When Ashley returned home, an argument ensued, leading to the fatal attack. During the confrontation, Smith retrieved a lock knife from his bag and stabbed Ashley up to the hilt of the knife into his neck. As Ashley lay bleeding, Smith taunted him, saying, "Cry to your mummy," before fleeing the scene. Smith later turned himself into police, but had attempted to cover his tracks by washing and disposing of clothing and items that might link him to the crime. The court heard that Smith had a fragile ego and couldn't take being challenged by Ashley, who had told him to F off after Smith had walked home with Ashley's mother. Smith had purchased the fishing knife 2 days prior to the incident. Smith claimed at trial that he had acted in self-defence, but the jury at Swansea Crown Court found him guilty of murder by a majority verdict. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 28 years. The judge described Smith's actions as cowardly violence that ended the life of a precious son, brother, partner, and friend. Stephen Morgan, who was also 36, was convicted of assisting an offender and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Morgan had delayed calling for an ambulance until he knew that Ashley was dead, intending to delay or prevent Smith's arrest and prosecution. At number 3 and number 4 is Lauren Harris and David Webster, who were sentenced on the 12th of August. In November 2023, 65-year-old Mark Wilcox was brutally murdered in his Colwyn Bay home by his partner Harris and her accomplice Webster. Harris, who was 29, stabbed Mark twice, puncturing his lung and his pulmonary artery, while Webster, who was 43, bludgeoned him with a vodka bottle. The attack left Mark with severe injuries, including broken ribs, and he was found dead in his armchair the following day. Mark had been in a relationship with Harris, who had moved into his home earlier that year. Despite Mark's financial struggles, he continued to support her. In the days leading up to the murder, Harris began a relationship with Webster, and the two had spent Mark's money on drugs. The court heard that the murder may have been motivated by anger over Mark's depleted finances. After the attack, Harris and Webster fled the scene in Mark's car, which they'd later abandoned. 2 knives were recovered from the vehicle, with DNA evidence linking them to Webster. Both defendants denied involvement, but a jury at Mold Crown Court found them guilty of murder. A third man, Thomas Whitley, who was also present during the incident, was acquitted of murder. During sentencing, Mr. Justice Edward Pepperell described the murder as brutal and senseless. He noted that Harris had showed no remorse, even singing the Shania Twain song, "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," as she was led into the dock. Webster, who had a history of violence, was also warned for his behaviour in court, having shouted expletives at Harris during the sentencing. Harris was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years, while Webster received a life sentence with a minimum term of 23 years. At number 5 is Kieran Carter, who was sentenced on the 26th of September. In December 2023, 22-year-old Kieran Carter from Birmingham fatally stabbed 30-year-old Daniel Ray at his home in Wales. Carter, who was a drug dealer, had travelled to Daniel's residence to collect a drug debt. An altercation ensued, during which Carter inflicted a fatal stab wound to Daniel's thigh, severing an artery. Despite Daniel's plea for medical assistance, Carter fled the scene without seeking help. Daniel was later found by housemates and was pronounced dead at the scene. The incident was precipitated by a dispute over unpaid drug debts. Carter had recently established himself as a drug dealer in the Tree Forest area, operating from the home of Amy Jones. On the evening of the murder, Carter contacted Daniel to discuss the debt and subsequently travelled on foot to Daniel's house. Witnesses reported hearing a scuffle and glass breaking, followed by Daniel's laboured breathing, indicating a violent confrontation had occurred. At trial, Carter claimed self-defence, asserting that Daniel had attacked him with a knife, resulting in a severe hand injury. However, the jury rejected this defence, concluding that Carter had used excessive force after disarming Daniel. The court found that Carter's actions went well beyond what could be considered reasonable self-defence, leading to his conviction for murder. On the 26th of September 2024, Carter was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years and 89 days, accounting for the time he had already spent in prison. He also received concurrent sentences of 4 years for supplying Class A drugs and 1 year for supplying Class B drugs, reflecting his role in the local drug trade. At number 6 is Ashley Davies, who was sentenced on the 18th of October. On the 1st of January 2024, in the early hours of New Year's Day, 30-year-old Davies fatally stabbed Connell Evans, who was also 30. Connell was discovered seriously injured near the car park of Rhondda Hospital and was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. A post-mortem examination confirmed that he died from a single stab wound to the chest. The exact motive is somewhat unclear. The incident appears to have occurred due to a minor dispute that escalated due to Davies's aggressive actions, culminating in the tragic death of Connell. Davies was arrested and charged with murder and possession of a bladed article. He stood trial at Merthyr Tydfil Crown Court, where, after a 10-day trial beginning on the 30th of September, the jury found him guilty on the 11th of October. On the 18th of October 2024, Davies was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 26 years. At number 7 is David Sisman, who was sentenced on the 28th of November. On the 14th of May 2024, 36-year-old Lee Crew was fatally stabbed on Chepstow Road in the Maindene area of Newport in Wales. The assailant was 21-year-old Sisman, who used a large Rambo-style knife in the attack. Lee, who was unarmed and intoxicated at the time, succumbed to a single stab wound to the chest. Sisman, a known drug dealer, admitted selling drugs on the night of the incident. Following the stabbing, he attempted to evade capture by disposing of the weapon in the River Usk, changing his clothes and fleeing to Bristol. Despite these efforts, he was apprehended and charged with murder. During the trial at Newport Crown Court, Sisman pleaded not guilty to murder, asserting that he had acted in self-defence. His defence argued that Lee, described as a rolling cauldron of boastful fury, posed a threat, and that Sisman reacted instinctively out of fear for his safety. They also referenced a text message from Lee stating, "I'm jacking someone," suggesting an intent to rob Sisman. The prosecution contended that Lee was retreating and posed no physical threat when he was attacked. They highlighted that Sisman provided no comment during police interviews and emphasised the premeditated nature of carrying such a weapon. On the 1st of November 2024, a jury unanimously found Sisman guilty of murder, and he was subsequently sentenced on the 28th of November to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 24 years. At number 8 is Brian Whitelock, who was sentenced on the 20th of December. In December 2024, 57-year-old Whitelock was sentenced to a whole life order for the brutal murder of his neighbour, 71-year-old Wendy Buckney in Swansea. This conviction marked his third killing, following previous convictions for the 2000 murder of his friend Nicky Morgan and the manslaughter of his brother Glenn Whitelock. Whitelock served 18 years of a life sentence before being released in 2019. Whitelock's earlier crimes were committed during a drug and alcohol-fueled incident in October 2000. He murdered Nikki with a pickaxe handle or hammer and subsequently set fire to the body in an attempt to destroy evidence. The fire also claimed the life of his brother Glenn, who was asleep upstairs and died from smoke inhalation. Convicted in 2001, Whitelock received a life sentence for these crimes. After his release in 2019, Whitelock moved into a flat opposite Wendy, a retired horse riding instructor known for her kindness and belief in second chances. She employed him for odd jobs around her home, unaware of the danger that he posed. On the 22nd of August 2022, Whitelock launched a frenzied attack on Wendy using a kitchen knife, a broken table leg, and wooden shelving to inflict multiple injuries. The assault was so severe that there were too many wounds for the pathologist to count. Following the attack, Whitelock was seen leaving Wendy's flat and confessed to a neighbour saying, "I've killed Wendy." He later attempted to change his account, claiming he found her body after seeing someone else near the property. In court, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, citing a recent brain injury. However, psychiatric evidence suggested his actions were more likely due to drug intoxication. The jury rejected Whitelock's manslaughter plea and found him guilty of murder after less than 30 minutes of deliberation. During sentencing on the 20th of December 2024, Mr. Justice Griffiths described the crime as a brutal, terrifying death, and emphasised that Whitelock had degraded her body in death. The judge imposed a whole life sentence, meaning that Whitelock will never be released from prison.